Good evening. This is go-to training night for LA Film School classes Digital Film Lighting 2 and Cinematography 2. Welcome back. Lighting guys, this week you were learning, you were wrapping up your basic electricity review, your color theory, and we were getting into our horror and sci-fi lighting themes. And camera folks, you guys finished lens work and lighting for tone this past week. So you were looking at advanced three-point lighting concepts and talking about shape and texture and color of light and variations on key placement to get different looks out of your light kits. And I believe that most of you are using the Favatech Studio Pro fluorescent softbox systems. So tonight I thought I would show you something a little different. I've noticed a couple of you are working with LED products and a couple of you are trying to work with alternate light sources to see if you can get some harder qualities, get some different qualities other than the soft sort of wrappy gentle quality of those soft boxes, which is a good thing. I would encourage you to do as much experimentation as you have the desire for, because that's going to inform you on different ways to create your lighting in the future with new and exotic tools. So that's why I thought it would be neat to talk to you about LEDs this evening. I've got a bunch of them kind of splayed out here on my desk. I don't want to pull it all up at once. I figure I'd go through these one at a time and just sort of introduce you to some products. LEDs started on the scene, gosh, I want to say 2001 maybe, with some primitive types of LED fixtures. They were very green in their rendering. They had a very incomplete color spectrum, which doesn't render white light very well, and it doesn't help the camera render skin tones very well. And they had a color quality a lot like some of the overhead fluorescence you might get in institutional spaces like banks and shopping malls and things of that nature. So the early LED products weren't very promising, but it didn't take too many years for folks to sort of start exploring the concept of LEDs. And one of the first pioneers out there in the LED community was a German designer named Carl Schultz. And Carl, who's a friend of mine incidentally, Carl had many lives in manufacturing. He was involved in the 70s with the Ionero company and the DeSisti companies, designing tungsten incandescent fixtures for TV studios and motion picture use back in Eastern Europe in the sort of Renaissance days of filmmaking in Europe and in the United States. And then he evolved into designing daylight balanced high-intensity discharge fixtures for the motion picture industries, particularly in the United States. He worked a little bit with Aeroflex, Arnold and Richter, designing small HID fixtures, high-intensity discharge fixtures. We call those HMIs. They're daylight balanced, so when you shoot with daylight balanced film in those days, or now with your digital video cameras, you could use those lights. They have a full color spectrum for rendering, so you get nice flesh tones. They balance with outdoor lighting and indoor day interior lighting. So that was an interesting turn in his career. And then in his latter years, Carl got into exploring LEDs and what their potential could be for the industry and what that impact might be. And he started a company called LEDZ. Some people refer to it as LEDZ. but it's actually LEDZ, and that's them right there, LEDZ. And basically, his first product was a little tiny 3-emitter product called a mini par. And what was neat about the mini par was it was very reminiscent to his HMI products that he was manufacturing, in that it had a set of emitters, 3 of them, daylight balanced, and they were what we call surface mount diodes. And if you look right in there, you can see 3 SMDs, or surface mount diodes. And they have a little bubble over them. That's a condenser lens that basically helps that diode project its light forward in about a 120-degree beam angle, which, as you're studying your lighting, you might know that it's kind of a wide angle of projection. So what was interesting about these surface mount LEDs that were coming from Lumuled, was that the diodes could have a lens placed over the front of them. And if you look, the back of this has 3 holes, which corresponds to the 3 holes in the back on the LED card or the wafer. And you just sort of plunk this lens inside, and it rides right over. It's got three little set holes in there. I don't know if you can see them. There's 3 holes, and there's 3 little legs on the lens, and it just kind of pops inside like so. And then it's got this little retaining ring / gel holder that screws down over the top and holds that whole business in place. So when you turn it on, which uses 12-volt DC power, by the way, you get a nice little hot and spotty, I don't know if you can see it behind me, LED par light, and it's pretty intense. Look at the look at that beam back there. You can really see that thing. Smack my camera with some hard light. You can really see that thing projecting on the wall, and you can see how big the projection is. It's very narrow, isn't it? That's due to these really great lenses that are working over the tops of the diodes to take that 120-degree beam angle and focus it all forward. And in the process of doing so, not only does it narrow down the projection, but it intensifies the beam. So you get this really bright, robust exposure out of this little guy right here. And they're all aluminum. This happens to be machined aluminum and metal yokes and metal stand receivers. So it makes for a real durable little product. And the nice thing about this guy is you can put a little inline dimmer on it, like this guy here, and basically you can adjust the output of this guy so that it's not very bright. And in doing so, you can start from next to nothing, or about 5%, and you can dim it right up to full power. And pow, it's pretty bright. So this was a neat tool, and it kind of took the market by storm. Carl took it to the National Association of Broadcasters convention in Las Vegas, his first year of prototype manufacture, and he attracted the attention of a group of folks at Hollywood Rentals. And you may remember Hollywood Rentals from some of our other work that we're doing, particularly in lighting too. There's some materials on Hollywood Rentals. They're a professional lighting rental house with a number of locations across the country. They've got locations in Los Angeles where they started, Texas, Louisiana, Georgia, Florida, and Charlotte, North Carolina. And from all those points, they can service all the cities of the United States. Wherever there's motion pictures being made and folks need to rent equipment, you can go to Hollywood Rentals. So in I believe it's your Lighting 2 Week 4 materials, there's a video that we did down at Hollywood Rentals. you can check that out and see what they're all about. Basically, Hollywood Rentals, in addition to selling gear, they also, in addition to renting gear, they also sell equipment. And so they were interested in carrying the LEDZ product. So they started with the mini PARs. And from there, the line sort of grew and expanded. As they sold more of the product, Carl was able to explore new designs. And his very next design was the LEDZ Brute 9, which is this guy right here. This is actually one of the original models of the LEDZ Brute 9. They went through a couple of generations of diode improvement and structural improvement based on input from people from the field saying, hey, wouldn't it be neat if the lights had this or that? For instance, this light in the beginning was manufactured without an onboard dimmer. Later models have dimmers built into the product. This particular one, you had to apply an inline dimmer to adjust the intensity of this guy, and it also didn't have a built-in switch. It was basically what we would call a hot stab. In other words, you would plug this guy right into the power supply, and the minute you plug that power supply into the wall, pow, the light comes on at full power. So it was a rudimentary design, but he was exploring different arrays now. You can see that this has 9 diodes in it, and that's unique because the original product only had 3 diodes, and if 3 is nice, 9 is better, right? That's the American way. So he went with the LEDZ Brute 9. As I said, later subsequent versions had more LED diodes on them, and these are also what we call optimized surface mount diodes. In other words, they have lenses on there that are matched to that particular LED on that particular electronic board to give you a certain projection. This one happens to be a medium projection, and the older original LEDZ Brute 9s projected more in a square or oblong pattern. So the little mini PAR is giving you a narrow round projection. The LEDZ Brute 9 was giving you more of a rectangular projection that was designed to, cover a 16:9 frame a little better if you were flat lighting something. And from the 9, of course, every time they manufactured a new fixture at LEDZ, they were learning things, right? They learned a bunch of stuff from the mini PAR. And then they learned a bunch of stuff from the Brute 9. And what came next was a rethinking of, or a redesign of, the 3-diode fixture. And they came up with the LEDZ Brute 3. And they called it Brute because of the punchy, robust nature of the fixture. But the Brute 3 took the 3-diode concept of the mini PAR and rearranged the array so that everything was in line. And that involved a different kind of diode board. The same diode board, in fact, that the Brute 9 was making use of. So inside this product are 3 boards with 3 diodes each on them, and just one board was the resulting inspiration for the LEDZ Brute 3. And the LEDZ Brute 3, of course, has some other great features on it, which was the use of a heat sink. The surface mount diodes are quite a bit warmer than traditional diodes that you get out of, say, a household LED replacement like this. We call this a corn cob. These are small, low wattage surface mount diodes. They don't generally get very warm, at least not warmer than you can touch this with, even after it's been in your lamp and burning for several hours. Whereas these diodes, because there's only 3 of them, they're high-intensity diodes, and they burn very brightly. And as a result of that transaction of brightness divided by only 3 diodes, the resulting byproduct of this particular fixture and the Brute 9 was an extraordinary heat factor which had to be relieved. So you can see the back of the Brute 9 has a heat sink, and the back of the Brute 3 has a heat sink. And so the heat sink is designed to wick away the heat from the diode board inside here and keep those diodes cool while this light is powered up and working for you in the field. So the heatsink was a unique idea that LEDZ came on the scene with very early on in the LED manufacturing game. They have a power input now instead of having a dangling pigtail like the Mini Par and the Brute 9 had. So now you're taking your 12 volt 2.1 by 5.5 millimeter DC connector and you're inserting it into the power port, and then on the other side of the fixture is now mounted an inline dimmer so that you can turn the light on from 0 now. You can just barely energize those diodes and you can go all the way up until that puppy is full power and just blasting my camera. So this is a pretty neat product in that respect, because now you had your dimmer built in, you had high intensity diodes, you had an optional or a fully modular power supply, so you could very easily disassemble this guy, pack it into a box, wrap up your power connectors, and they make a very nice lighting kit as a result. And these are pretty strong. In fact, if I turn this back on and I turn it on full power and I shine it behind me, you can see it's pretty bright on that back wall. But you'll notice something different about the beam angle. It's a little bit wider than the Mini Par, and it's not quite as hard. It's softer. So the lenses in this product are designed to intensify the raw diode, but they don't do it so much that you have a well-defined beam or ball of light when it hits the wall. It has a nice soft sort of ball of light that hits the wall and sort of falls off into diffused ambience, which is kind of nice. You do see that it has a proclivity for multiple shadows because it's 3 diodes in a line now instead of the circular projection from the Mini Par. So you do get multiple shadows from a product like this. But if any of you are studying your diffusion and the products and gels available to us for our lighting fixtures, you'll know that if you apply diffusion to this, you can further soften the output of this fixture, and you can also reduce the effect of multiple shadows because of the multiple diode array. So this was the LEDZ Brute 3. In the years since, LEDZ has come out with a Brute 16, which I believe is no longer in manufacture. In fact, it's questionable whether many of these are still being manufactured, but you can always find them online on eBay. You can find them used by folks that are cashing out and retiring or moving on to different or bigger products. Because later in LEDZ's career arc, they came out with the Brute 16 and then the LEDZ Brute 30, which was 30 of these surface mount diodes in one fixture. So you can imagine the product looked a lot like this, but instead of 9, you had 30 of them. And that product was manufactured and sold right up until about 2015, I guess, when they started slowing down in manufacture. The ownership of the company changed hands a couple times. But like I said, you can still find the fixtures online, maybe through eBay, for instance. They tended to be a little bit pricey because of the durability factor. In fact, they're kind of rare on websites like eBay because the fixtures last so long. Diodes like this are designed to last for a very long time if you take care of them. If you don't keep the diodes cool, like they did with the LEDZ product using the heat sink, if you don't use something like this to wick the heat away from the circuit board that the diodes are mounted on, of course, the product is going to get very warm. And when the LED diodes get very warm, their life cycle is drastically reduced. And so a surface mount diode that is kept properly cool using heatsink technology can last you 50 to 60,000 hours of color correct full intensity output. And that translates into having this light turned on nonstop for 8 to 10 hours a day for 30 years, basically. And that's a long time. So you can see why there won't be a lot of these products available used on the market, simply because they last so long. So that's surface mount diodes from the LEDZ manufacturer. There are also manufacturers of panels out there making soft output product, like, for instance, Dracast. This is a Dracast 1000 1x1 LED panel. So there's 1,000 diodes on this circuit board, and they are little glass beads, basically. You've probably seen these before. Oops. If I get this nice and close, you can see they're little glass beads. So they're different than the surface mount diode like you saw inside the mini par, in that these, the diode itself is an aspect of the glass bead, and the little gate current transfer is inside the glass bead. There's two little wires that stick out the bottom of it that you use to solder to your electronic board, and you run the current through the glass bead and you get your light output. So the Dracast company came out with this 1000 LED panel, and this one happens to be a bicolor dimmable fixture. So this has, unlike the LED mini par, which is daylight only output, or the LEDZ Brute 9 or the Brute 3, which were all daylight output, the Dracast panel is bicolor. So it has aspects of tungsten or daylight in any combination or mixture of those two color sources in its output. So, and the neat thing about this guy is it has a built-in battery plate. So this happens to be 1, 2, 3 lugs to mount this battery on the back. It's what we call an Anton Bauer gold mount. So you get a battery like this, which is an Anton Bauer Dionic 90 with a gold mount, and the contacts on the battery match up with the contacts on the battery board, like so. And it clicks into place and locks so that the battery won't fall off. And then when you turn it on, of course, you have daylight or tungsten. I'm going to dim this way down so you can see the effect of the color. Dim it down even further. Whoop, maybe not going to work. You might be able to see it on me. I was trying to show you. It's tungsten balanced or daylight balanced. I think the computer is working against me here, trying to correct for the difference in color. But if you go with daylight, you can see the blue kind of collecting here on this reflector, or the tungsten value. Whoops, sorry. Which is more warm, and you can see that there. And basically what it does is it cross fades two sets of diodes, blue and tungsten, and when they're both on, you're getting a mixture of that color quality at about 4600 Kelvin. It's kind of hard to see because it's so bright. It's blowing out on the screen, but there we go. You can kind of see every diode is on now. If I change that to tungsten, or daylight rather, half those diodes are going to turn off, right? Now you got only the daylight diodes in your output, and if I change the color to tungsten, the other bank of diodes comes on and they're all orange in color and they're tungsten balanced. So when you get full output of this fixture, you've got both banks on at the same time, and then you get all 1,000 diodes on at the same time. So that can be a really bright fixture at full intensity with all those diodes on, and a very nice kind of quarter CTO, a warm color that comes out of that thing, about 4,800 degrees Kelvin. Very nice. So that's a 1x1 panel, and these are really popular. There's a lot of manufacturers out there making 1x1 panels right now. The folks that are making your fluorescent softbox kit, Favatech, also make a 1x1 product that's bicolor or daylight only. Now, the thing about daylight only is you might feel like, well, why wouldn't I want bicolor? It does all that stuff. Well, you can always put a warm gel on a daylight fixture to get a warmer quality out of it. But imagine if all these diodes were just daylight. It would be a lot brighter, because now, since it's only one color, all 1,000 diodes are going to be used at full power. So, and they're all the same color, which means this at full power is true daylight 5,600 Kelvin, as opposed to a bicolor product at full power, which is only about 4,800 degrees Kelvin, which is a little bit warm. So it all depends on what your needs are and what your preferences are. But that could be a very interesting option to have a daylight only panel. So Favatech makes a 1x1 daylight panel, which takes a Sony V-mount battery, and they also make a 1x1 bicolor panel that also takes a V-mount battery. So you can take products like this out into the field with you, and if you got a battery, you don't have to worry, because you don't have to plug this thing in anywhere. So you don't have to hunt down power at the location you're shooting at. You can set it up pretty quickly on a stand, and you can be shooting in minutes, because as long as that battery's fully charged and you pop it on the back of that light, you can set it anywhere you want, turn it on. The output is usually plenty for interviews and for lighting people up at comfortable distances of 6 to 12 feet. And if you got a few of these in a bag, you're good to go. You can light your stuff on location, and you can run around. For a battery like this will last you probably all the way to lunch. And then if you have a spare one that you can put in its place, after lunch you can go the rest of the day on 2 batteries. So, and if you turn the light off in between setups and in between moving and in between takes, you can save even more battery life and conserve your power and get even longer burn times out of one battery. So this is an interesting product. I thought you'd like to see it. There's also smaller versions of that guy. Here is an on-camera light. You can see it's got a little cold shoe adapter here, so you can mount it to the top of your camera. And look at what we got in here. Surface mount diodes again, right? And no lenses, just the little domes. So that tells you this is a really wide, flat, soft, I'll show you, light output. That's only 10%, by the way. Look how bright that is at 10%. And this is also a bicolor fixture. So we have we've got a dimmer here, and then we've got our full tungsten. You can kind of see the glow around the diodes. It looks a little orange. Or full daylight, and then when we mix both colors at 4,800, everything's on. And it gives you in the back, it's kind of nice. If you're working the dimmer, it gives you your dim value, and if you're working color, it gives you your color temperature right there in a little LED readout, which is pretty cool. So you know exactly where you're at when you're adjusting this light product on your camera. So that's a nice, something to have for, the... here we are at the scene of the car accident. The ENG guys, they use the on-camera light to get their breaking news segments on late night television. Here's Dracast's answer to the onboard camera light. You can see they've got a little cold shoe connector on the bottom of theirs. This product is a little bit different in that it's a plastic enclosure. This one's a metal enclosure. It's kind of nice and durable. This one's a plastic enclosure, so it's maybe a little bit lighter. It's certainly a little bit cheaper. And it's got about, I think this is 250 or 240 diodes in here. And it runs off a battery as well. It runs off a little Sony NP570, 770 or 970 battery. It just pops in the back like so. You just sort of pop it in there just like you do with your FS5. And then you've got dimmer, and you've got color temperature. You can see it turning blue and orange in my hand. So you've got, let me dial this way down, see if I can show you. And it goes down to about 10%, and then you can't go any lower. There's all daylight, there's all tungsten, and there's a combination of the two. That's about 4,200 right there, 4,600. And this one's also pretty bright. Not as bright as the, not as bright as this guy here, but pretty bright. You can get this on eBay for about $35, $40. Not too bad. And it does get pretty bright too. You'll see that when I pointed at my camera, pow, it's pretty bright. Now, the thing of it is because it's small, it's what we call sourcey. In other words, it doesn't project real wide, even though it's got glass bead diodes in there. It's still kind of intense and small, a point light source, particularly if you get really far away. So what you might want to do is add diffusion to this, like you know, just a piece of diffusion gel, so that, you know, when you're in close and you want to get a nice soft wrappy look out of this on somebody's face, you can see how it's kind of hard and directional if I don't soften it up. But you can get some interesting looks out of this guy if you're really cunning about it. And so this is your onboard LED fixture. So those are glass bead fixtures, like the Dracast here, the little glass encapsulated diodes, we call them. They come in daylight or tungsten or both. They're generally low power consumption, so you can have, in fact, most of these LED products, you can have a bunch of them plugged into the wall and be shooting without popping breakers at your location or in your house if you're shooting at home, say in the living room. Most living rooms have 15 amps in a circuit in the entire living room, and you might have 3 outlets, but all outlets are going back to the same breaker in the breaker panel. So once you plug in too many things, bam, 15 amps doesn't last very long, and your breaker pops, and you got to go into the basement or the hallway or the garage and cycle your breakers back on and get your lights turned back on in the house. So the nice thing about LEDs, as opposed to other conventional light sources, is they don't take very much power at all. So you could have, gosh, 8 or 12 of these plugged in your house and not have to worry about popping a breaker. I mean, they're that economically featured in terms of consumption. However, the output is pretty decent. I mean, I think you'll agree. I don't think I turned this on full power, but that's pretty bright. I think you'll agree that that's probably brighter than your softbox at home with your little pigtail fluorescent bulbs in it. So the LEDs are pretty bright. They got a pretty intense output. So that leads me to the latest generation of LED products. Dracast is fairly contemporary. I mean, they try to keep up with what's going on, but there are companies like, well, Pro-Aim and Neewer that are coming out with products, and they're available online through places like Amazon, and you can pick up stuff like that pretty cheaply. In fact, I've got one bookmarked here for you. This is not what I want to show you. Here it is. This is called a Genray Crux, and it's 7 inches in diameter, and it's a round LED flat panel. You can see how thin it is, and on the back it takes a couple of, it takes one Sony NP570 or 970 battery. This one I believe is also bicolor. and you've got a daylight only option. It's got a 12-volt power supply if you want to go that route, or you can go battery. It's got a nice yoke, so you have nice focusability and positioning of the fixture, and it comes with a nice nifty set of accessories. You got your AC to DC power supply, you've got your battery charger, which is also some of these are also a power supply, but this is a battery charger which you can plug into the wall, charge your batteries, and you can use your AC power supply while this is charging. And it also comes in a nice handy little case to keep everything together while you're traveling. Not a bad option. Something to think about. That one's only, in fact, that's currently on sale at B&H for $100. Get that, right? Who can argue with that price? So these are about, say, 40 to 60, depending on what site you find it on. You know, something like this from Dracast is going to cost you about $1,200, $1,500. The Favatech version will only cost you about $2.5. That's a good price, and it's bicolor. I recommend you guys check out. In fact, let me show you, if I can, the Favatech website and show you what it looks like. Favatech Studio Bicolor LED. And the 600B, that's the one. And that's it. It's a pretty handsome light. It is it's $418.95 for a pair of these guys, and that's what it looks like. It has a metal enclosure. It takes a diffusion pane in front, so you can cover the diodes, which are underneath in two different colors, tungsten and daylight. You can use it raw, or you can use it with the diffusion panel in place. It just slides in from the side. You can see these little tracks right there. It's got a fully adjustable yoke, so you can mount it to a light stand. And for a couple $100, it's doing darn near what this does. Now, this has 1,000 diodes in it, and the Favatech only has 600 diodes in it. So that's part of the difference in price. But there's product out there that's attainable, and it's at a pretty inexpensive but valuable price point. So I would check out the Favatech product as well. So the last thing I wanted to show you was the newest generation of the surface mount diodes. This is a 24 light Das Licht product, and it has 24 surface mount diodes. It's pretty bright. I've got one behind me over here, and it is at about, gosh, 25% output, and it's bouncing into the ceiling to just sort of illuminate the room. But you can see how it's got a nice clean daylight color to it. And when this puppy is dialed all the way up, this is about the brightest thing you could bring on location that you could plug into the wall without spending $10,000 on an Airy M18 daylight high intensity discharge par. So this is a really good product, really bright, and really economic to use. The whole thing is using about 8 amps DC of 12 volt power, but when you plug it into the wall, it's only pulling a couple of amps out of the wall, so you can have a few of these plugged in without worrying about burning the house down either if you're shooting at home. So that's kind of a brief history and look at LED equipment. I hope you enjoyed this discussion, a little change of pace from what we've been talking about recently. So that's it. So I hope you enjoyed it, and next week you folks in lighting will be looking at action and dramatic lighting themes, and the folks in cinematography too. We're going to be talking about camera motion and the psychological effects of camera motion on our audience and on our story. So I hope you guys are enjoying your classes. I hope that you are engaging one another in quality discussions. Get your homework done. If you have any questions, as always, you can reach me through email or leave a message on my office phone. I'll call you back. Or we can set up go-to training sessions and we can talk one-on-one at your convenience, whatever time works for you. I'm here for you. I'm here for your questions. So let me know what you think of this video and reach out to me. Otherwise, I'll see you around the Los Angeles Film School portal and the LMS. And have a good night, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for tuning in.